The war had already lasted too long. Across the galaxy, stars burned not with light, but with fire. Entire worlds were silent now, not peaceful silence, but the silence of death. Cities floated as broken shells in space. Fleets drifted like metal graves, their crews long gone. Every major species had joined the war. Every great empire had sent its best ships, its strongest soldiers, and its smartest commanders. And still, they were losing. In a dark chamber far from the battlefield, the Galactic Council gathered once more. The room was massive, built to hold beings of many shapes and sizes. Tall crystalline figures stood beside armored insectoid generals. Smooth-skinned diplomats sat near floating energy beings. Normally, the council hall was loud with debate. Today, it was quiet, too quiet. At the center of the room, a large hologram showed the current state of the war. Red markers spread across star systems like a disease. Each red mark was a lost world. Each flicker meant millions, sometimes billions, dead. An old commander from the Kethari species finally spoke. This system fell 3 cycles ago. He said slowly, "Our fleets were wiped out in less than 1 hour." No one argued. A Threxian warlord slammed one clawed hand onto the table. "Then we send more ships. We still have reserves." A soft voice answered him. "No," said the speaker from the Lumine Order. "You don't." The Threxian froze. Everyone knew the Lumine rarely spoke unless the situation was truly hopeless. "Our spies confirm it." The Lumine continued. "The enemy adapts faster than we do. Every time we change tactics, they counter them. Every time we build stronger weapons, they return with stronger shields." Fear moved through the chamber like cold air. The enemy had no name that mattered anymore. Every species called them something different, but all meant the same thing: extinction. Another council member spoke, her voice shaking. "Then what options remain?" No one answered. They all knew the truth. There was only one option left, and no one wanted to say it out loud. At the far end of the chamber, a young analyst stared at a single blue icon on the edge of the hologram. It was small, untouched, surrounded by empty space. Earth, human space. The analyst swallowed and raised his voice. There is one force that has not entered the war." The room turned toward him instantly. Some faces hardened. Some showed anger. Others showed something far worse, fear. A tall Avrixian admiral hissed, "Do not say that name." But the analyst continued, because desperation was stronger than fear now. Humanity has remained neutral since the war began. Their borders are closed. Their fleets are hidden. They have lost no worlds. A low murmur spread through the council. The Threxian warlord laughed bitterly. "Because they are cowards." "No," said the old Kethari commander. "Because they are careful." Silence returned. Humanity, a young species, compared to most of the galaxy. No ancient empire. No grand galactic history. And yet every species knew the stories. Humans came from a violent world. A world of storms, quakes, predators, and constant danger. A world where survival was never guaranteed. They had fought wars against themselves for centuries. Wars that should have destroyed them. But they survived. They adapted. They learned. When humanity first reached the stars, they did not come as conquerors. They did not ask for protection. They built, traded, observed. And when threatened, they responded with terrifying focus. Records showed humans fighting while outnumbered 10-1. Records showed human soldiers continuing to fight while wounded. Records showed human commanders choosing victory over survival. Most disturbing of all, humans did not break easily. They endured. The Lumine speaker dimmed slightly, a sign of deep concern. If we asked them for help, this war would change. "Yes," said another voice quietly. "But how?" No one could answer that. Some believed humans would save the galaxy. Others believed they would make it worse. The council debated for hours. Voices rose. Accusations were thrown. Old rivalries resurfaced. But outside the chamber, another star system fell. A warning signal echoed through the hall. Another red marker appeared. The decision was made in silence. A single encrypted message was prepared. It was not a demand, not a threat, It was a request, a plea. The message was sent across the void, toward a quiet region of space where no battles raged and no alarms sounded. Toward Earth. Days passed, then weeks. The war grew darker. Refugee fleets crowded safe systems. Entire species prepared for extinction. Some council members hoped the humans would never reply. Others prayed that they would. Then, without warning, the blue icon on the hologram changed. A response had arrived. The chamber filled instantly. The message was short. No speeches. No conditions. No demands. Only one line. Humanity has heard your call. The room held its breath. Then the second line appeared. Humanity has accepted. No cheers followed. No relief. Only fear. Because the galaxy knew one terrible truth. The war had been terrible before. But now, the council chamber did not celebrate. After the message from Earth arrived, no one spoke for a long time. The words were simple, but their meaning was heavy. Humanity has accepted. For some, those words felt like hope. For others, they felt like a warning. The old Kethri commander finally broke the silence. Then we must prepare, he said. Prepare for what? Asked the Threxian warlord. Victory? The Kethri did not answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the hologram of human space. Prepare for consequences, he said at last. Across the galaxy, secure channels opened. Military archives were unlocked. Old records, long ignored, were pulled from deep storage. If humanity was coming, the galaxy needed to remember exactly who humanity was. Historians spoke first. Humans came from a world that tried to kill them every day. Their planet had violent weather, unstable land, and countless deadly creatures. Even their own bodies were fragile compared to many species. And yet, they ruled their world. They did not survive because they were strong. They survived because they refused to stop. Human history was filled with conflict, wars between nations, wars over land, power, belief. Again and again, humanity stood on the edge of destruction, and again, they pulled themselves back. Alien scholars noted something disturbing. Every great human war made them more dangerous. They learned from defeat. They improved from failure. They turned suffering into experience. A looming archivist spoke quietly during one briefing. Most species avoid war because it weakens them. Humans are different. War teaches them. Military commanders focus on something else. Human strategy. Humans did not fight like the rest of the galaxy. They did not rely only on advanced weapons or perfect formations. They used deception, sacrifice, unpredictable moves. They were willing to lose battles to win wars. Records showed human fleets retreating on purpose, only to return stronger. Records showed humans using damaged ships as traps. Records showed commanders making impossible decisions and standing by them. One Avrixian officer summarized it in one sentence. Humans do not seek fair fights. As the days passed, scouts were sent closer to human space. They were ordered not to cross borders, only to watch. What they saw made many uncomfortable. Human shipyards were active, very active. Massive vessels were being moved from deep storage. Ships that had not flown in decades. Old designs, but heavily reinforced. Scarred hulls, thick armor, and minimal decoration. These were not ships built to impress. They were built to survive. One scout reported, "Their ships look crude, heavy, almost ugly." Another scout added, "But they are armed far beyond standard levels." More reports followed. Human fleets were not forming large, bright formations like other species preferred. Instead, they gathered in small, dense groups. Quiet, dark, no unnecessary signals. No songs. No broadcasts. No threats. Just preparation. The enemy noticed too. Enemy patrols began avoiding regions near human space. For the first time in a war, their advance slowed, not because of resistance, but caution. One captured enemy commander was heard saying, "Something has changed. The silence feels wrong." Inside human space, leaders gathered on Earth and its colonies. They did not hold open meetings. They did not make speeches to the galaxy. Humanity did not declare war. They simply began to move. Factories shifted production. Civilian trade ships were converted into supply carriers. Old weapons were upgraded instead of replaced. Human generals studied the enemy carefully. They watched recordings of lost battles. They counted every mistake the galaxy had made. They did not rush. That frightened the alien allies the most, because humans never rushed unless they were angry. At the Galactic Council, tension grew. Some members wanted to send another message to Earth, to ask questions, to set limits. Others refused. You do not give humans limits once they decide to fight, the Kethri commander warned. You only decide whether they fight with you or without you. Then the first sign appeared. A distant system near the warfront went silent. No distress calls. No explosion. Just quiet. Scouts were sent. They returned hours later, shaken. The enemy fleet that had occupied the system was gone. Not damaged. Gone. Only wreckage remained. Clean cuts through armor. Disabled ships drifting powerless. No signs of panic, but clear signs of control. A single symbol had been left behind on a shattered command vessel, a human military mark. The council stared at the report. Humanity hasn't announced their arrival, someone whispered. The Kethri nodded slowly. They never do. Fear spread, not panic, but something colder, understanding. The galaxy realized something too late. Humanity did not join wars loudly. They joined them quietly. They studied. They positioned. They waited. And when they finally revealed themselves, it was already too late to stop them. Far from the council, on the edge of the battlefield, an enemy fleet detected a new signal. Multiple warp signatures. Not fast, not dramatic, just steady. The sensors struggled to classify them. Unknown ships, unknown weapons, unknown tactics. The enemy commander felt something unfamiliar tighten inside his chest. Fear. And for the first time since the war began, he gave an order no enemy leader had ever given before. Signal all forces, he said. Humanity has entered the war zone. The galaxy held its breath, because the moment everyone feared was finally about to begin. The battlefield was already burning when the humans arrived. Two massive fleets faced each other near a dying star. On one side stood the combined forces of the Galactic Alliance, damaged ships, tired crews, and commanders running out of hope. On the other side waited the enemy armada, cold and patient, confident of another easy victory. The enemy had numbers. They always did. Alien sensors screamed warnings as new signals appeared at the edge of the system. Unknown vessels, multiple signatures, slow but steady. The enemy commander studied the data and laughed. So, this is humanity, he said. Late, small, weak. His fleet did not change formation. The Allied commanders watched in silence as the human ships moved forward. They expected speeches, signals, some kind of announcement. None came. The human fleet was different. Their ships were dark and heavy, shaped like moving fortresses. No glowing hulls, no bright shields, only thick armor covered in old battle scars. They moved with purpose. One by one, they slid into position between the enemy and the Allied fleet. Not behind, in front. A shocked Avrixian captain whispered, "They're shielding us." Before anyone could respond, the humans attacked. There was no warning shot, no hesitation. Human weapons fired in perfect silence, followed by sudden violent impact. Enemy shields collapsed in seconds. Armor split open like thin glass. Entire ships vanished in blinding flashes of light. The enemy commander's smile vanished. "What weapons are those?" he demanded. No one could answer. The human fleet advanced without slowing. When enemy fire struck them, the ships absorbed the hits and kept moving. One human vessel lost its main guns. Instead of retreating, it accelerated straight into an enemy cruiser. The impact shattered both ships. The Allied fleets watched in horror. "Did they just ram it?" someone asked. "Yes," another replied softly. "They did." Human fighters launched next. Small, fast, and deadly. They moved like predators, not machines. They ignored damaged enemies and struck command ships first. Enemy coordination began to fail. The enemy commander shouted orders, but confusion spread through his fleet. The humans were not fighting to survive. They were fighting to end the battle. An allied tactical officer stared at the data feed. Their movements, they're predicting the enemy. The Ketheri commander nodded grimly. No, they already learned them. As if to prove the point, the enemy attempted a flanking maneuver. Human ships were already there. Traps closed. Explosions lit the battlefield like falling stars. Then something even worse happened. Human ground assault pods launched toward a nearby occupied world. That planet had been lost months ago. Its surface was heavily fortified. No species had dared to land there since. The enemy commander laughed again, desperate now. They will die on the surface. He was wrong. Human soldiers hit the ground like a storm. They moved through fire, smoke, and rubble without stopping. They used simple weapons, but with terrifying accuracy. Wounded soldiers kept fighting. Fallen soldiers were pulled to safety by their own. And when ammunition ran out, they did not retreat. They charged. The enemy ground forces broke within hours. Across all channels, panic spread. This was not a normal fleet. This was not a normal species. One Allied commander finally opened a direct channel to the human flagship. Human command, he said carefully, state your intentions. The response came instantly. This war is now our responsibility. Nothing more. The enemy commander realized the truth too late. Humans did not fight to push enemies back. They fought to remove them completely. New human ships entered the system, more than sensors had predicted. They emerged from unexpected vectors, cutting off every escape route. The enemy attempted a full retreat. Human ships followed, relentlessly. One by one, enemy vessels were disabled, captured, or destroyed. No mercy was given to armed resistance. Within hours, the battle was over. The system fell silent. Debris drifted through space. The Allied fleet remained frozen, unsure what to do. They had survived because humanity had arrived. Reports flooded the galaxy. Enemy losses were unlike anything recorded before. Tactics had failed. Numbers had meant nothing. Every species began to understand the same terrifying truth. Humanity had not entered the war at full strength. This was only their opening move. At the Galactic Council, fear replaced hope. One delegate whispered, "If this is how they begin, how do they end?" No one answered. Far away, deep within enemy space, alarms sounded. Human symbols appeared on tactical maps across multiple fronts. The enemy leadership held an emergency meeting. For the first time, their discussions were not about conquest. They were about survival. One enemy strategist said quietly, "We underestimated them." Another replied, voice shaking, "No, we misunderstood them." Back on the battlefield, human ships regrouped. Repairs were made quickly. Supplies were distributed. No celebrations followed. The humans prepared to move again, because for them, the war had just begun. The victory should have brought relief. But across the galaxy, no one felt calm. After humanity's first battle, something changed. The war did not feel the same anymore. It was no longer a struggle between equal forces. It had become something darker, something more controlled, something human. Alien commanders studied the battle recordings again and again. They slowed them down. They replayed every moment. And each time, the same conclusion appeared. The humans were holding back. At first, no one wanted to believe it, but the evidence was clear. Human ships used only part of their firepower. Human fighters withdrew early instead of chasing fleeing enemies. Human ground forces stopped advancing once objectives were secured. They were not trying to destroy everything. They were learning. That frightened the galaxy more than the battle itself. The Ketheri commander spoke during a closed council session. Humans treat war like a problem, he said, not like a rage. They study it until they solve it. Reports soon confirmed his words. Human engineers analyzed captured enemy technology and improved it within days. New weapons appeared on the battlefield almost immediately. Shields adjusted. Armor changed. Tactics evolved. The enemy tried to respond. They failed. Each time the enemy changed strategy, the humans were ready. Each ambush failed. Each trap collapsed. It was as if humanity could see the future. On occupied worlds, humans landed again and again. They did not bomb cities without reason. They cleared paths for civilians to escape. They built temporary shelters under fire. This confused many alien allies. Humans were ruthless in space, but careful on the ground. A Lumian observer described it best. They fight monsters, but refuse to become them. The enemy began to panic. Entire enemy fleets refused orders. Some commanders delayed attacks. Others fled at the first sign of human presence. The war slowed, not because it was ending, but because fear was spreading. One enemy officer was captured alive. During interrogation, he spoke without resistance. "We were taught that humans were weak," he said, "too emotional, too divided." The interrogator asked, "And now?" The officer lowered his eyes. "Now we know the truth. Humans are dangerous because they care." The galaxy listened. Humans cared about victory. They cared about survival. They cared about each other, and that made them unstoppable. Then came the moment that changed everything. A major enemy stronghold, long believed impossible to take, fell in less than 1 day. Not through overwhelming force, through patience. Human fleets cut supply lines quietly. Communication was jammed. Power systems were disabled one by one. When the enemy realized what was happening, it was already too late. Human troops entered the stronghold without celebration. The enemy surrendered. The news spread like fire. For the first time, an enemy world fell without being destroyed. Alien leaders were stunned. "If they can do this," one council member whispered, "they can control the entire war." Fear grew sharper, not of destruction, but of dominance. Some species began to wonder if inviting humanity had been a mistake. A Phyrexian warlord voiced the fear openly. "What happens when a war ends?" he demanded. "Will humanity stop?" The room fell silent. No one had an answer. Human commanders did not boast. They did not demand authority. They followed alliance plans, but subtly adjusted them, and each adjustment made things better. The galaxy slowly realized something terrifying. Humanity was not taking control by force. They were taking it by competence. More systems were liberated. Refugees returned home. Enemy resistance weakened everywhere humans appeared, but so did tension among the allies. Some began watching human fleets more closely than the enemy. Others quietly updated their defense plans, just in case. At the edge of the war, a human commander stood on the bridge of his ship, looking at a star map filled with red and blue markers. "We are close," one officer said. The commander nodded. "Yes. Should we accelerate the final phase?" the officer asked. The commander was silent for a moment. "No," he said. "Not yet." The officer hesitated. "The enemy is breaking." "Yes," the commander replied, "and that makes them dangerous." The officer understood. Humans had learned this lesson long ago. A wounded enemy fights hardest. Across the galaxy, every species began to understand why the stories about humanity existed. They did not fear humans because they were violent. They feared them because they were effective. Humanity did not rush. They did not panic. They did not lose focus. They endured. And endurance, the galaxy learned, was the most terrifying weapon of all. At the Galactic Council, the final realization settled like a heavy shadow. The enemy was no longer the greatest threat in the room. Humanity was not their enemy, but they were no longer just allies either. They were something else, something the galaxy would never forget. And somewhere deep in enemy territory, alarms began to sound again. Human fleets were moving, this time toward the enemy's heart. The final assault did not begin with noise. It began with silence. Across multiple star systems, enemy communication went dark at the same time. No warning signals were sent. No calls for help escaped. Command centers lost contact with their fleets in moments. The galaxy felt it before it understood it. Humanity had begun the final phase. Human fleets moved deep into enemy territory with precise timing. They did not attack everything at once. They cut the enemy apart, system by system, until no force could support another. Enemy leaders tried to gather their remaining strength. They failed. Every attempt to regroup was met by human interception. Every hidden base was found. Every secret route was blocked. The humans did not chase. They closed doors. On the enemy homeworld, panic spread. For the first time in generations, their skies were empty of friendly ships. Human vessels appeared in orbit without resistance. They did not fire. Instead, a message was broadcast across the planet. It was simple. This war is over. Stand down and you will live. The enemy leaders argued. Some demanded resistance. Others saw the truth. There was no escape. The surrender came quietly. No explosion marked the end of the war. No final heroic charge. Just a signed agreement transmitted across space. The war was over. The galaxy exhaled. Celebrations began on saved worlds. Cities rebuilt. Families reunited. Songs were written about survival. But something was different. The joy felt careful. Because everywhere people looked, they saw human ships. Not threatening, just present. Human soldiers helped clear ruins. Human engineers restored power grids. Human doctors treated wounded of every species. They asked for nothing. This unsettled many. The Galactic Council invited human representatives to speak. The chamber filled once again. This time, the humans entered calmly. No armor, no weapons, just simple uniforms. A council leader spoke. Humanity has saved the galaxy. What do you ask in return? The human delegate paused, then answered honestly. Nothing. The room reacted with confusion. No territory? Another asked. No political power? No tribute? The human shook his head. We fought because the war reached us. We do not want to rule anyone. Silence followed. Finally, someone asked a question no one wanted to voice. What happens if the galaxy turns against humanity one day? The human delegate looked around the chamber slowly. We hope it does not, he said. But if it does, we will endure. That single word echoed through the hall. Endure. After the meeting, human fleets began to withdraw. Not all at once. Carefully, slowly. They left defense systems repaired. Supply lines restored. Trade routes reopened. Then they returned to their space. The galaxy watched them go. Some felt relief. Others felt loss. Many felt fear, because they now understood something important. Humanity had not fought for glory. They had not fought for dominance. They had fought because they could not ignore suffering, and that made them unpredictable. In the years that followed, stories of the war spread. Children of many species learned about the moment humanity entered the battle. They learned about human endurance, human sacrifice, human control. New galactic laws were written. Weapons treaties were adjusted. Defense plans were rewritten. Not against the enemy, but with humanity in mind. Not because humans were evil, but because they were capable. On a distant human world, a veteran stood beneath a quiet sky. The war felt far away now, but its weight remained. We did what we had to, he said to no one. And that was the truth. The galaxy had survived, but it would never forget. Because when humanity joined the war, they did not just end it. They changed everything. Years passed after the war ended. The galaxy healed slowly. Worlds that were once burning were rebuilt. Trade returned. New alliances formed. Old enemies tried to forget what had happened, but no one truly did. Because even in peace, humanity remained. Not as conquerors, not as rulers, but as a memory that refused to fade. Across schools and academies, young beings of many species studied the war. They learned dates, battles, and names. But one lesson stood above all others. Never force humanity to fight. Historians argued over how to describe humans. Some called them saviors. Others called them a last weapon. A few, more honest ones, called them survivors. They all agreed on one thing. Humanity changed the galaxy forever. In the Galactic Council, meetings were calmer now, but every discussion included one silent question. What would humans do? No major decision was made without considering humanity's reaction. Not because humans demanded influence, but because ignoring them felt dangerous. New laws were written carefully. Wars were avoided. Threats were softened. Peace lasted longer than it ever had before. On a distant alien world, an old enemy commander lived out his final years in quiet exile. He often stared at the stars and remembered the first human ships. They were not the strongest, he once said to a visitor. They were not the largest. He paused, then added softly, they were the last ones who would stop. Within human space, life returned to normal. Factories slowed. Fleets returned to patrol. Soldiers went home. Humanity did not celebrate the war. They remembered it. Memorials were built. Names were carved into stone. Stories were told not of victory, but of cost. Parents taught their children what war meant. Not glory, but loss. A young human once asked a veteran, "Why did we help them?" The veteran thought for a long time. "Because we knew what it felt like to stand alone," he finally said. That answer spread far beyond Earth. Other species began to understand something they had missed before. Humanity was dangerous not because they loved war, but because they hated it enough to end it. Years later, a new threat appeared on the edge of known space. Small, weak, easily stopped. The Galactic Council gathered again. This time, there was no panic, no fear, just quiet confidence, because humanity was watching, and the threat disappeared before it ever reached the core worlds. No announcements were made, no battles recorded, just silence, the kind of silence that meant safety. A Lumian scholar wrote in the final record of the war, "Humanity does not rule the galaxy. Humanity guards it by existing." That record became required reading, not as a warning, but as a reminder. On Earth, the stars still shone brightly. Humans looked up at them with curiosity, not hunger. They explored. They learned. They endured. They did not seek another war, but they were ready if one came. Far away, in the deepest regions of space, unknown beings watched human territory with caution. They had studied the records. They had seen what happened when humanity entered the war, and they chose a different path. Peace. The galaxy did not love humanity. It did not worship them, but it respected them. And fear? Fear remained. Not loud, not sharp, but quiet, controlled, because fear, when understood, becomes wisdom. And so the story ended where it began, with silence. But this time, it was not the silence of death. It was a silence of understanding, because every species now knew the truth. The moment humanity entered the war, every species trembled, and long after the war ended, they still did.